The Egyptian tortoise is the second smallest species of tortoise on the planet. They are so small that as adults, they can fit in the palm of your hand. Now, this fact makes them a good candidate for captive keeping, but that fact is actually one of the reasons that they're one of the most persecuted tortoises on the planet, and they are now considered critically endangered. Their native range is being decimated by development and war and everything else, but they've also been poached to a heavy extent for the pet trade and other things to the point where they're now almost extinct on the planet. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking with Ralph Till. For those who've been listening to the podcast for many years, you'll remember Ralph back from May 2021. Ralph is a breeder of Egyptian tortoises, and in the first episode, we discuss his breeding colony and why he's so passionate about working with them. In today's episode, we take it one step further, and Ralph introduces his Kleinmanni Assurance Program, which is a brand new program that he and 6 other people have created to help save this species from extinction. This is one of those examples of the private sector reptile keeping community doing something extremely positive for an animal on our planet. And in this episode, we discuss how the Kleinmanni Assurance Program works, the steps they're taking to make it official, and why it's so beneficial to have something like this. We discuss stud books and species survival program, as well as genetic testing, and just how they're going to go about essentially mapping out the current captive population of Egyptian tortoises within the United States. This is an incredibly interesting episode if you're someone who keeps Egyptian tortoises, or if you're somebody who actually wants to replicate a project like this for another species. I think this is a highly important episode for you because you'll pick up some great tips for how to do this. And as I always say, the more of these types of programs we have out there, the more credibility we have with the government and the lawmakers and other corporations who are also doing, fighting for whether it's banning pets or more regulation, those sort of things. If we can actually show this sort of value, it is highly beneficial. I'll just put it that way. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I will talk to you once it's over. Enjoy. This podcast is all about improving your reptile husbandry. However, I know not everybody has the time or the money to go out and spend thousands of dollars doing custom builds. Thankfully, friend of the podcast, Josh Halter, aka the Bio Dude, is working hard to make better care more accessible. He makes turnkey bioactive kits for leopard geckos, ball pythons, tortoises, invertebrates, dart frogs, and the list continues to grow. He has spent years testing and perfecting these handcrafted substrates and dietary supplements to create the most effective products. If you visit thebiodude.com, you will see he is a proud supporter of both USARK and responsible reptile keeping, and there is an option to donate to either at checkout. Zoomed is one of the most recognizable brands when it comes to reptile lighting, and later on in this episode, I want to tell you more about one of their products that will allow you to simulate both a sunrise and a sunset, which in my opinion is one of the coolest things you can do with your reptile lighting. So if that's something you're interested in learning about, make sure you stick around through the rest of the episode, and I will tell you more about it then. Well, Ralph, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm super excited. As we were saying off air, it's crazy that the last one we did was 4 years ago now. It's just flown by. So, and I think for people who are just tuning into this first one, they could probably go back to the first episode we did, and I'll make sure it's in the show notes just to give more of a background of Ralph and how you kind of got into it. We'll briefly cover this now as well, but for much more in-depth conversation, they can go there. But why don't you kind of bring us up to speed? I'd love to just quickly remind us of your history keeping Egyptian tortoises, what got you into them, and then we'll go from there.
For sure. First, I'd like to say you would be amazed at the amount of feedback that I got from this program 4 years ago. To this very moment, I still hear from people that reach out to me, and it's because of this program. So I'm indebted to you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I've ran into several people at shows and whatnot. They're like, I keep an Egyptian now. I got into it because of that episode you did with Ralph, and yeah, it clearly struck a chord with folks. Yeah.
So, thank you for that. A quick history. I started with these. Oh gosh, it's probably going on now 17 years ago. I had all the typical redfoots and leopards, and I even went the sulcata route. I was one of the idiots that bought the baby sulcata, and within 3 years it was 1.5 feet long and eating me out of house and home. And I just decided that there was no future in that for me. I needed a project that inspired me. That was my motivation. At the same time, I was introduced to a gentleman who worked exclusively with the Egyptian tortoises, and it was like a marriage. Something just clicked. and they needed help. I needed something to help, and so the journey began.
Mm.
And it's been a great journey. I mean, I've been at it now, like I said, coming up on 17 years, and I've learned a lot, made some mistakes along the way, but you learn by your mistakes. And
Absolutely.
and I tried to be honest with people and also create what I felt was probably one of the premier breeding groups of Egyptian tortoises in the United States. I'm sure there are those who would argue that, and maybe they have more animals, and that's okay. I don't care. But I'm real pleased with the feedback that I've received from other people, and how this journey has taken me to where I am right now.
Are you exclusively Egyptian tortoises now in your collection, or do you have some other things?
I also have Pyxis,
Okay.
spider tortoises. Um, I I don't talk about them a whole lot, but I also have a very generous collection of them, and I've been very successful with them. That's a little bit different niche, if you will. They're not they're not as popular, and it's probably best for the time being that they stay that way
Mm.
for the species' sake.
Yeah. That makes sense. So then, as far like you said, it's coming on 17 years of keeping the Egyptians. How have things changed, just even care wise? Have things evolved and progressed through these 17 years? Like I'm sure the care you have now is different than back in '08 or whatever it was when you started.
Uh, you learn, of course. I mean, basically, it hasn't changed. The actual care. What has changed is technology, i.e., UVB. It's become much more improved over time. Some of the available diets that are available and supplements that are available have improved, but the basic care, uh, to me, hasn't really changed. Um, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about their conservation status and whatnot, kind of their natural habitat. But as far as what they are, and maybe, I'm sure maybe there are people listening to this that don't even know anything about the Egyptian tortoise. So maybe I'll give you a little time to just kind of expand on that. But they do almost fulfill like a perfect pet tortoise, like all the check boxes. I'm not never cared for them myself, so I don't know how difficult they are to care for. But as far as just their size and everything else, you're not like you said, it's not a sulcata tortoise that's going to eat your drywall. It's they do check a lot of good pet boxes.
Well, they do, and unfortunately, that's their downfall.
Right.
Uh, they're the second smallest species of tortoise in the world, second only to the paddleopers down in South Africa, lower South Africa. Um, an average male Egyptian weighs maybe 175, 185 grams, and if he's 4 inches long, he's big.
Mhm.
Generally they're 3.5, maybe 3 3/4 inches long. An adult female, my largest one weighs about 420 grams and is maybe 5 inches long. That's a big girl. There's always exceptions, of course. So yes, they can fill that niche again, where if you want to keep a very small tortoise on your desk or whatever, and it doesn't require a lot of room, theoretically, that's they would fill that. Um, the problem is that they require more room than what people think.
Mhm.
Even though they're tiny, they're quite active, and they need to move around. And as with any care, you have to offer them different temperature gradients, different places to hide. You have to have water available. Rarely do they drink, but you have to have it available, even if they just walk through it. Um, and their diet, they're a little particular with their diet. A lot of people just fail on that, and the animals fail to thrive.
What do you do specifically for their diet to make sure they're robust and healthy?
Uh, I feed them primarily a mixed salad, and I'll use oh gosh, romaine, escarole, curly endive, dandelion greens, um, spring mix, collard greens, and I chop it up into a big salad, and I just feed them. I just take a little handful of that and feed them that, and then once or twice a week I add a little bit of some commercial diet, and then I have another mixture of like a chopped hay, Timothy hay, with some flower petals and things in it. I'll sprinkle on the salad a couple times a week.
So is the mistake that people generally make just going sort of the classic issue with tortoises is feeding too much fruit and high sugar type
Oh
foods?
gosh, yeah, no fruit, no sugar,
Yeah.
not for the arid dwelling species, and there's a problem. Like the redfoots, they'll eat an apple, a rotten apple in a heartbeat, uh, because that's part of that's in their native land.
Mm.
These guys are just the Egyptians, it's just little dried up grass and little low lying leaves and maybe an occasional flower. That's all that's all that's available to them. I'm sure if they were crawling along and a piece of rotten fruit fell off a tree, they might take a bite or two out of it, primarily for the moisture content.
Right.
But yeah, avoid sugar.
Now, the fact that you've kept them for so long, and when we're going to talk about the project that you kind of recently launched in the last couple of years, it seems like the passion for them not is continuing to grow. It's not like it's kind of staying stagnant. You're actually taking it to the next level from my perspective. So how is that, like, how is that spark still there with this species?
Well, uh, some people, and I always joke about this, they say it requires a commitment. And I jokingly say, yeah, I probably should be committed. You know, I just, I don't know. Once I got involved with them myself, uh, I just became so enamored with them. And the more I learned about them, the more I felt for them and how they were treated in the wild, how they were treated in the trade. Sadly, because there's cute little things that can fit on I'm hesitant to say small aquarium because that's the last thing in the world you want to do. But a small enclosure on a desk, people want them, and so they poach them, they do whatever they can to get them. I never looked at it from that point of view. I looked at it as that this little guy needs help. This species needs help. It's persecuted in the wild in its native environment. And if I can, in some small way, save some of them and create a reliable breeding colony of them in the U.S. To just perpetuate the species. And why I took it to the extremes, I don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a true answer, just because I like to.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you don't need an answer for those things. It's just whatever it's the thing that's calling you to do. And clearly you've done an amazing job with it. So to lead us into this program that you've started, why don't we discuss maybe a little more in depth about their conservation status, like what is their situation in the wild, and then I know there was some law changes recently as well in the States. Maybe was it last year or so that's changed the keeping protocols or keeping regulations. So I think those two things sort of fit well together. So why don't we start with the conservation status of them, and then we'll talk about whether they're legal to keep or any of the rules that have changed.
So number one, they are legal to keep. Okay, in the U.S. What happened a few years ago? They were petitioned by activist groups to be listed as protected under the Endangered Species Act. Okay. Now, I'd have nothing against the Endangered Species Act. if used properly, if utilized what it was intended to do. But these groups pursued it, and US FWS basically had no alternative but to through lawsuits and whatever to approve it. So, with that being said, in May of 23, it was finalized, and they are officially listed as protected under the Endangered Species Act. Now, what does that mean in the U.S.? Nothing. Not a damn thing. It serves no purpose, in my opinion, except within the writings of the Endangered Species Act, there is a clause called the 4D rule. And that 4D rule was developed to, instead of importing an elephant or a lion or a tiger, people would import ivory and lion's teeth and elephant's teeth and tiger teeth and stuff like that. So that's why that 4D rule was created. What the 4D rule does is prohibits any interstate commerce. So when that law went into effect, I could no longer sell any of my hatchlings across state lines. Now, some people really, including me at the time, thought that was pretty crappy. I still think it's pretty crappy, but it's the law and you have to work within it. So that kind of changed the whole direction, What do we do now? Do I just give up on them because somebody said I can't sell them? Well, maybe let's just take that off the table, and go in a different direction.
Yeah, because it is one of those things where you sort of understand the spirit of the rule, but at the same time, it's actually damaging the ability to protect them in captivity. So it's kind of counteracting what we want. If it's an Endangered Species Act, we want this to be able to help protect them, but it actually prevents you from being able to build a stronger colony.
Yeah. And there's some exceptions to that rule. Most of the zoo community, or if you're a facility, a registered facility, i.e. a zoo, you're kind of exempt from that. But zoos aren't really in the business of selling things as a whole. So, it really had no big effect on them. It really just attacked the private sector. And I took it quite personally because at the time I was probably one of the leading producers of hatchlings. And in the big scheme of things, we're talking about a federal law that prohibited the sale of maybe 150 animals throughout the entire United States.
Right.
We really need a federal law to prevent the sale of 150, not 150,000 or 50,000 or 1,500, but 150, or maybe 200 if you want to get really crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
That
is it's very counterintuitive. And then as far as the are they CITES? Are they Appendix 2 on CITES, or are they listed on CITES? Are they Appendix 1? Okay,
so and they have been since in the mid 90s. Egypt joined CITES. Well, they listed the Egyptian under CITES in I don't know, let's say 95, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And so technically, without proper CITES paperwork, no animals should have been exported from the country legally.
Right.
That's the law. But that was
so. Is there no wild caught imports now? That's or I should say, like legal above board type wild caught imports.
There have been no legal imports since the mid 90s.
Okay.
I mean, they're poached out of there by well, there's no more in Egypt. They're virtually extinct in Egypt. So now there's some animals that are wild that are in Libya, and Libya doesn't recognize any of the laws. So they poach them out of Libya and they bring them into either Cairo or Alexandria, sell them on the streets for $5 a piece. And somehow, magically papers get made up and they get shipped to wherever.
Sadly. In the wild, they're critically endangered, I think. This is a species that will disappear if nothing is done.
If they haven't, they guesstimate. I mean, depending on what survey and what official organization, they guesstimate that they're down to maybe a couple of thousand specimens total in all of Egypt.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's depressing.
Yeah. And then they have zero chance of procreating, there's just, I mean, they're doomed. They're doomed.
So this is where hopefully we can lighten the conversation a little bit with the project that you've created.
That's the negative part of it.
That's the negative side. And partly there's some responsibility on the private keeping part. There's a lot of poaching, like you said, that goes in the wild. It's not all us that's doing it. It's just, this is part of the nature of keeping reptiles, is that sometimes the history of pulling from the wild is definitely done in an unethical way, but we can hopefully steer the ship in a way that shows that the private sector actually is capable of doing good things. So why don't you tell us about the program you started, and then we'll kind of break it down. Because I'd love to do two things. One, really give people an understanding of how your program, the assurance program, works and what it does, and if they want to get involved, how could they? But also, I think it's a good template for people who want to do something similar with other species, right? We can talk about it, and then it will give people ideas if maybe they're working with an endangered species as well. So hopefully that the structure of the conversation can give people that idea. But anyway, tell me about the assurance program, and especially how did you start it? The best part about providing high-quality reptile husbandry is you get to develop a long-term relationship with your animal. Meet Jackson, my 18-year-old crested gecko. Jackson lives on the BioDudes Terrafauna substrate, which is one of their substrates that's specifically designed for warm biomes and humidity spikes. Like all other BioDudes substrates, it contains organic content to help support the plant life in Jackson's vivarium. It also holds moisture very well, which means humidity is never an issue, even in my dry climate. Another favorite of mine is the BioDudes Bug Grub. This is a supplement powder made from natural ingredients like carrots, beets, spirulina, oats, and potatoes. Everybody knows how important gut-loading feeder insects is, and this simplifies it for me and allows me to be confident when I feed both Jackson and my tarantulas that they're getting the nutrients they need to thrive. Also, if you have a lot of babies right now, this is a great way to help fortify the diets of neonatal reptiles. The BioDude has a ton of great educational content on both his YouTube channel and the website, all about bioactive care, and it's just one of those brands that's doing their part to push herpetoculture into a positive direction and give reptile keeping a better name.
So when the ESA law passed, I received, I can't tell you how many emails and phone calls and from different individuals. Ralph, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? This is terrible. You got screwed, and the species are going to die. And you, a lot of people thought that it was the end of the world for me, and I said, no, I'm okay here, but I took all that information and I thought, what can I do? All right. I have a very nice collection. I have a very nice network of people. I should do something to try and save these guys, because nobody else will. And I don't want to start a war there, but nobody else would step up to the plate. I don't mean personally, but organizations, they just put regulations on top of regulations on top of regulations, but the end result is nothing happens. The numbers just keep dwindling. Mm-hmm. So I said, I got to do something positive. So the next thing was how to do it within the context of the law And so I came up with a few ideas, and I said, this is beyond me. I can't do all this myself. So I said, let's reach out and talk to a few people and get some feedback from them and see what they say. So I did that. And then I came up with a group of individuals, and I kind of vetted them. I knew what their position was. They also worked with the Egyptians, by the way. I mean, that was one of the criteria. And and we had an annual conference, the TTPG, the Turtle and Tortoise Preservation Group conference. It's in Phoenix, Arizona, every November. I've attended it for years. And so I asked all these individuals, are you going to this conference? And if so, would you give me 15, 20 minutes of your time to talk about a project that I'm thinking of doing, and would you be interested in participating? They said yes. So we had an opportunity to meet. We sat at this big old conference table in a lobby at a hotel over Phoenix, and I presented my basic plan, and what my 15-minute talk went on for about an hour and a half.
Classic.
And they unanimously agreed that this is something that we need to do. So I said, okay, now what? And so I, fortunately, each one of these individuals brings something to the table. There's marketing, there's computer skills, there's communication, contacts within the zoo network. I mean, they each had something to offer. That's what I was looking for. And so each one of them put on their thinking cap. And then we started to meet. We said, we need to be organized. We need to meet periodically. And so every 2 weeks, we meet via Zoom. And one of the gentlemen is very organized, and he has a plan of attack, and we discuss things, and we come up with ideas. A name, we had to come up with a name, and we had to come up with a logo and a mission statement and a vision, and that's what we did. And this went on for a year. Well, not quite a year, I guess, but yeah, I guess a year. Yeah, because we formally introduced the Kleinmanni Assurance Project at the most recent TTPG meeting in Phoenix. So that's how it was. That's how it was created.
So was your vision basically just to create a program because one of the things is, like, if people listen to our first conversation, the sentiment that you're sharing now of trying to protect and save the species was there as well. Like, you were already doing this was driving your interest in working with the species. And I think that's probably why it came off so well to the listeners, because they could hear the passion of you just wanting to save these little tortoises. And so was it a goal to formalize that in a way that can make it a more of a potent project?
Yeah. I wanted other people to know what we were doing. The power of numbers. It's pretty simple. I want to be recognized by the zoo network. I want to be recognized by the government. I want to be recognized as an entity that is legitimately trying to preserve the species. That's their whole goal, is saving the Egyptian tortoise. Okay. And it needs to be organized. I can't emphasize enough. It has to be organized.
Yeah.
And I knew that. I knew that there are plenty of them around. Everybody has two, or I say everybody, but the people that are into them have 2 or 3 or 1 or something like that. But to form a collaborative, and then we had to get into all the creating a stud book and registering animals, and it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, but I think that's right. It's so true. If we need to, as a private sector, if we want to play the game with the public sector, whether, the people, lawmakers and whatnot, it needs to come off as something official. It needs to have a logo. It needs to have a mission statement. It needs to seem like when they go to the website, it's not a guy that has tortoises in his basement. There's something there beyond a pet keeper.
I want to say something. When the ESA listing came out, and all the information that was, I should back up there. When the ESA listing was first proposed, you have a 30-day window to respond. Okay. And that's typical with any issue that is proposed by the government. You have a 30-day comment period. That's the law. And there were 136 respondents to that, which turns out are not many. I thought it was great, but I've since learned it was kind of embarrassing low. Out of 136, 131 of them were against the listing. The 5 that were for it were your activist groups, and they wrote these 10-page dissertations, and they listed every legal entity, they have teams of lawyers that spend hours and hours and hours researching this stuff. And it's all based on science. Okay. And when I read it, I said to myself, no way in hell are they going to approve this, because it's just a bunch of scientific mumbo jumbo. We're hands-on, we're on the ground, we're doing it. Well, that's when I learned the hard way that none of that matters. It doesn't matter what the private sector does. If it's not scientifically supported, it means absolutely nothing. And that was a tough one for me to accept. I'm a blue collar guy. I always have been. So I'm a hands-on. When all else fails, you just get in there and start swinging. Mm-hmm. So it changed my whole perspective. And that's when this group was created, I told these guys the same thing. I said, we have to be professional. I'm not going to play the whole scientific game, but as a group, we need to demonstrate that we know what we're doing, and we're passionate about it, and we're organized. And more than that, we're willing to share. Mm-hmm. It's not a secret. We're not trying to create something that's never been done before. We're just trying to do something positive because nobody else is.
Yeah. It's not a shell company to allow people to keep pet tortoises. It's so much more than that, right? It's not like a fake thing. And we do see this in the reptile trade quite often, where people are using conservation as a way just to keep pets and keep animals, and maybe not do it the best and most ethical way they can, because I'm keeping these animals in my house, which means I'm saving them from extinction, which it's sort of a weak position to play from. But this is a legitimate, the goal is assuring we don't lose these tortoises off the planet, and there's nothing fake about it. And I think stamping it as an official way is the only way to make the public sector be aware of that.
Yes. In a nutshell, yes. And that's just a direction that we're trying to take.
So why don't you lay out some of sort of the broad purpose of what it does?
When we were preparing for this presentation, this unveiling, if you will, I took it upon myself to do about a 15, 20-minute talk to the group, to the whole conference, to introduce the group. And just a quick summary of what I was doing, why it was similar to our conversation now. And in my perusing through the internet stuff, I came upon an expression that was created by a gentleman who has long since left us, unfortunately, by the name of David Lee. And it says, in the end, we will see that it isn't science or the laws and regulations of agencies that save species, although they are important tools. It is the passion of individuals that understand the reality of situations and actually do the work that turns the tide. Mm. All right. When I read that, the ding, 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 that's me. That's, I'm just a single guy. I'm sitting here in my little tortoise room playing with turtles, which is kind of crazy, I guess. But when I saw that, I said, that's exactly what I do. And that was my inspiration to pursue what I've done, what I've created here with this group. And then from there on, it was just a case of putting it together with the group and coming up with this plan of ours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a perfect quote to summarize. That's the classic issue with bureaucracy all the time, right? You have people that are making rules who actually aren't boots on the ground doing the thing that they're regulating, and they actually don't know enough about what they're regulating to make the rules, but they are. And yeah, when you're the person working with the animals, you are the boots on the ground individual. So I love the five, sort of to give people a rough skeleton. You have 5 bullet points, I think, on the homepage of just kind of the rough ideas, a rough description of what you do. So maybe we can run through those.
Yeah, let me just bring them up here. So yeah, we had and this is, again, every other week we would have these meetings, these Zoom meetings where we would get on and come up with these ideas and then try and narrow it down. Okay. And I can tell you, trying to corral 7 different opinions of passionate individuals is like herding cats. But a true testament to each one of them for persevering. I cannot thank them enough because of the effort that each one of them has put in. It's amazing. I'll give you all their names in a bit. But so we talked about creating a species survival plan. We want to create a source of information, husbandry tips, and that they're willing to share with anybody. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's not a secret. We're in the process now of trying to create some genetic work, do some genetic testing. That's very important. It's more difficult than what we thought it would be because of a lack of different specimens and all the animals that were pure, were genetically pure, were primarily all the wild caught animals that were brought in, 40 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. A lot of them are no longer available. So that's a challenge. And the cost is pretty staggering for genetic work. Partnering with other institutions. We're trying to develop a relationship with zoos. A lot of zoos have specimens, but they have maybe 1 or 2 on display, and that's primarily it. There's no incentive for them to do any more than that. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole nother story. And then trying to maintain a healthy population of genetically diverse animals within the boundaries of the country, of the U.S.
Right. So, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that's primarily what we're trying to achieve.
So is the idea that ideally, eventually you can almost map out what we have in captivity in the U.S. as far as, how many, you're never going to get the exact number, but roughly the specimens that are out there. And I'm curious now, do you think the program will allow you to get around the state law, like the state line law? Or I guess, are you still allowed to share animals or send them on breeding loans and trading loans? Like, how do you get out of the silo of the states with that new ESA regulation?
Uh, one of the rules, law, it's a federal law, no interstate commerce. Okay, so we cannot sell anything across state lines. You can sell within the confines of the state that you are listed, that you're registered in, but it has to be a resident of the state that you sell to. Okay, and so it is what it is. One of the criteria for joining this organization was an understanding that we've taken the dollars off the table. Okay, we are not allowed to sell anything. We can gift legally. You can gift animals. So that's a factor. Mm-hmm. You have to be careful because people will try and do shady things. We can't allow that within our group. We have to operate within the realms of the law. So anything that we do, we have a letter that our organization has created that signifies that this specimen is in fact a gift. And there's something else there to just get it over the top.
So at least you don't. Gene flow can still be managed. You're able to still kind of work with the captive population, and you're not going to end up with bottlenecks in a state that has 20 of them.
Our biggest goal right now is to, and we've done a very good job of it already. I mean, we have our own, I forget the term, but our own group of animals within the 7 founder members of the Kleinmanni Assurance Project. We probably have close to 100 animals, and they're all identified within the group. We know where they came from and who bred them. So that's the basis for our project. We reach out to others around the country and that we know have animals. We ask them if they would be willing to participate in the project. How many animals do you have? Are they male? Are they female? Are they young? Are they old? More importantly, where did you get them from? Mm. And so hopefully we can broaden the baseline for the genetic aspect of it. And then once we've created that, and we have enough broad idea of where these animals came from, then we will participate in the pure genetic testing. And then the idea is to create, again, as much genetic diversity as possible. Now, those animals are theirs. We're not asking them to give us their animal. That's not part of it. We just want to know if they would like to participate.
Right.
And then we go one step further. Because we cannot sell out of state, if you are in fact who we feel are a candidate, you've demonstrated to us, and I say that I don't want to sound like we're arrogant, and you have to pass a test, so to speak, but at the same time we take it seriously because we want to make sure that you're going to follow through. Mm-hmm. So if you meet the criteria and you already have 2 animals, CAP will send you 2 more or 3 more or whatever. We'll just gift them to you with the hope that down the road, and of course we're dealing with tortoises here, so everything takes time, that you will have a good baseline for your own genetically diverse breeding group.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And now that requires us to give away animals. And I can't tell you how many I shipped out of here last year for free.
Yeah. Well, that shows you the motivation. The motivation is not getting rich off tortoise sales.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how are you cataloging them? Do you have a database where you're like taking pictures of the tortoise and then giving
Yep.
the age and name and then eventually we'll
Yep.
link a genetic data to that?
Yep. Yep.
What do you guys use? Do you use like a Google Drive document, or what are you using to actually collect that information?
It's now you're going over my head with all that stuff.
Yeah, that's the computer guy's
one
job.
of the members is into that, and yes, he has a Google program, and he's got all the names and numbers and all that listed in there.
So yeah, I'm just trying to imagine if you're trying to because that's just gonna be a gargantuan file at some point, which is good. Like that's what you want. You want to be able to track as much as possible.
Yeah, well, what'll happen is you'll have somebody, I mean, including myself. If I produce, like last year, I had 37 hatchlings. Okay, not all. I mean, out of that 37, I had one female that probably produced 10 of them. Mm. So if you send somebody 3 hatchlings that are from the same female, you really don't want to track all 3 of them because you already know the background. You just really need to know one.
Right.
And now if I send one to this person and one to that person, one to another person, that's a whole different story. But I mean, some of it, there'll be some repetition in there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
There's some bugs to work out. It's not perfect.
But. Yeah, of course. But it's a start, and it's like you said, you're mapping out what's currently out there. And then I'm curious you haven't started the genetic testing yet, but is there any fear of, is there any chance of hybridization or any weird genetic anomalies that might pop up? I feel like they're such a small species of tortoise that's so specific that they should be purebred, for lack of a better term.
I've not ever heard of any morphs. I hope not. There was some argument here some years back because of the 3 different ranges, the Libyans, the Egyptians, and then into Israel is their native range. Okay. Eastern Libya, Western Israel, and then the whole coastline basically of Egypt. There were a couple of subspecies by name, but somebody did some genetic testing, and there was like a 99.999. They were all the same. Mm-hmm. It's just a slight adaptation to environment. Some of the coloring was a little different, but they're all the same.
Okay. And then have you guys already sort of figured out where you would do genetic testing?
No, okay. we're that's a work in progress. I mean, we have a good idea. It's not cheap, so we're trying to put together a package deal where we can, instead of doing 3 or 4, we can do 100.
Yes. Yeah.
Time. Now, and then not all 100 animals are in the same place because we're spread all over the country. So we're trying to create a package where I can get a package where I can test, say, maybe 20. And then somebody else gets a package that gets 10, and then the all the specimens get shipped to one area.
Yeah. It's I mean that's obviously the next level is trying to maintain the genetic diversity. I mean, you would hope that there's already quite a lot of diversity just within the captive population, but then again, you don't know. Is there a few individuals that have given birth to many of the tortoises out there?
There are, it's a well, I don't know if it's a problem. Within reptiles, I don't know if that is that important. Mm-hmm. I mean, you think of the range of a little tortoise. He doesn't have a range of 200 miles. He has a range of 2 miles.
Yeah.
Or 3 miles. So within that couple of 3-mile range, I'm sure there's some overlap, but I think the odds are probably pretty good that he meets up with his sister or his mother or something along the way, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And that's been going on for centuries, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. So that it may not be, inbreeding depression may not be a much of an issue, especially if you can start to get the genetic testing back, then you can just simple mixing up the genes and trying to be as diverse as possible should protect you guys completely from any inbreeding
Yeah.
depression or anything like that.
And I've been very, very conscious of that over the years with myself here. Any animals that I've ever taken in to introduce to my breeding program, I needed to know their background as far back as I could. Where did you get it? Where did he get it? Who bred it? I mean, sometimes it came full circle and it, was bred by the guy down the street. And I thought, oh, crap, that one, I blew that. But other times it came from a bloodline that was imported, 35 years ago.
Right.
So you kind of hit a home run. But then again, those animals that were imported are how diverse are they?
Yeah, they're all collected from the same site. They're just
exactly. They're all collected from that same couple of areas, 3-acre plot. So you don't know. You don't really know. But once we do the genetic testing, I think we'll have at least we'll be able to answer the questions better.
Exactly. And have you begun to reach out to zoos and sort of AZA associations with this program and say we're trying to do this? We'd love for you to be a part of it, or is that a next step?
We have made some contacts with a couple of zoos. Some of it has been very positive. I'm thrilled to say that I actually have 2 animals now placed in the AZA stud book.
Okay, cool.
Which is a huge thing. Some are not so responsive. It's all about the politics again. And
exactly.
I don't want to say anything negative about any of the organizations, but they have their own agendas. Like I said, you go to a zoo, any zoo, I don't care how big they are, and go to the turtle or reptile section and count how many Egyptian tortoises, if they have any, and Egyptian tortoises don't bring people through the gates.
Right.
Baby hippos and pandas and things like that bring people through the gates. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So if you have your main document of the we'll say like the Google Drive folder with all the animals cataloged, is that a separate thing from the stud book? Are those 2 different things, or is that kind of all in the same? Because you guys are also doing your own private stud book.
For us right now, because we made it ourselves, it's kind of one and the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much one and the same for us because it's been created in-house.
Right.
We tried to buy in, for lack of a better term, a couple of established stud books organizations, and it just didn't work. It was too much work and money on their behalf. So we were told. So we just said, all right, if nobody's gonna, we've hit some obstacles on the way.
Yeah, that's going to be part of it.
And instead of just getting all flustered, we just said, all right, well, we'll just do it ourselves and see what happens. And so we are.
Yeah, and it like when you look at the website, everything looks professional. It looks the feeling you get while looking at the project is that this is a professional thing that has a proper set of goals. I know on the website also it says eventually, or maybe this is in the plans in the future, doing some in situ conservation as well. So is that part of the plan, just once some cash flow is available, or is that more of a question mark because of the areas that they're in?
I would love to be able to tell you that we would like to be able to contribute to some in situ projects. Sadly, though, there's really only one area where there's any known animals left. Now, this is in Egypt. Israel, there's none left, and with all the nonsense going on there, the few that were there probably got blown up.
Mm-hmm.
And in Egypt, Libya, there's no laws at all, so they're sucking them out of there as fast as they can. So that'll dry up here real soon. That only leaves Egypt, and they don't seem to really care. So it would be nice if we could. There is an in situ research program going on right now, but they won't respond to us just because of the politics again.
Sure.
You know, we tried how can we help, or can we help, or can we do this, or can we do that? And after some initial contacts, they just went silent and said, well, they didn't say anything. So
yeah, so obviously the best course of action for you guys is the captive assurance captive assurance colony, rather than trying to do the in situ conservation.
Our primary focus is within the boundaries of the U.S.
Yeah.
All right. And establishing a known entity, making sure that we can track what we can track, and substantiate any comments or things that we should say or may or do. That's the primary goal right now.
That's why I think this model would work for many other species, for people that are working with whatever it is that are maybe on the edge in the wild, and who knows what the political situation is in the range that they're native to. There's a lot of power in having these animals within the U.S. or in Canada or North America or in Europe, in those borders, in a captive setting. But the keepers need to talk with each other, and there needs to be some mapping done with what's happening in captivity, and that's exactly what you guys are doing. Without that, then it's just willy-nilly. There's no way to actually get your arms around what we've done in captivity. If you actually want to see the natural, beautiful colors of your plants and animals in your vivarium, then they need to be lit up by a high-quality lamp, and that is where Med's ReptiSun LED hood with sunrise and sunset timer comes in. This lamp has an extremely high, best-in-class color rendering index of 94, which means the natural, vibrant colors of both your plants and animals are going to pop in the Viv, especially those that have red color, whether that's plants or animals. They are going to look incredible under these high-quality LED chips. And of course, the new exciting feature of being able to program a sunrise and a sunset, meaning you can actually gradually increase and decrease the brightness of the light by 10% increments to simulate that slow rise in the morning and slow set in the evening. It is IP65 rated, which means it's perfect for humid environments. And if you're somebody that likes to be efficient with their space, then you'll definitely want to check out the ReptiSun LED UVB combo hood. That includes both the LED strip for visible light, as well as programming the 90-minute sunrise or sunset, and a T5 for your UV production that runs on a on-off timer. The hood has aluminum housing for efficient heat transfer and longer life. It has independent timers for both the T5 and the LEDs, and a T5 UVB lamp is also included with the hood. For more information on this or any other Med product, make sure you head to zoomed.com or check out the link in the show notes or the YouTube description.
And that, to me, has been the beauty part of CAP, is the fact that, you know, like I said earlier, I had this idea and I thought, what can I do? I'm one guy. I need to create a team that were diversified across the country. So, you know, we now have breeding groups in the state of Washington and Colorado and Connecticut, Florida. We'll soon have one in North Carolina. So we can kind of touch, you know, the whole country. Yeah. I mean, just what you said, I couldn't agree more. And that's why we're doing it.
Do you want to list some of the folks that are helping you? You said there's about 7 people that you have on the team.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So when I reached out to these guys, you know, and a lot of these names will be familiar. It's a team, but Mark Da Silva. Okay. Mark Da Silva is the kind of the creative one. He can take a pile of junk and create a habitat that looks like it's natural. I don't know how he does it. And he's kind of sales oriented. So he's always pushing us to sell something. And Anthony Pierleone, he's the vice president of the Turtle Room. All right. A huge asset. And I might add, each one of these guys has Egyptians, and they're breeding them. Brendan Hedinger he lives out in Colorado, and he has a group of them. He's been a real good ally to the group. David Kelly, Denver, Colorado. Wichita, Kansas. Sorry. He has a group, and he's been a real asset. Ryan Howard, who lives out in the state of Washington. He's the one that does all the computer stuff. And so I kind of like whatever you say, Ryan. Charlie Moorcroft from the Moorcroft Foundation. Okay. Charlie has an incredible setup of Egyptians. And then of course myself. And I know all these guys because years past, they reached out to me to acquire animals. And I actually sold them a few hatchlings. I mean, I won't deny that for a moment. But over the years, we all kept in touch because that's what I wanted. I wanted to know, are you doing good? Are they thriving? Are they not thriving? If you're having a problem, what's happening? What's going on? And we've created this bond. And then when it came time to develop this project, they're the ones that I reached out to. And you ought to hear our meetings sometimes. I'm telling you, it's like herding cats, but each one is passionate about what we do. Just to create a logo, I mean, it was hysterical because we put a lot of thought into it, and each one of us had input. And oh my God, we must have had 50 different logo designs, before we actually came up. Do you have a copy of our logo at all?
I've seen it on the website. I'm not looking at it in front of me, but I don't remember. Like I said, when I looked at the website and the logo and everything came off as extremely professional and really clean looking. So I think you guys nailed it. Maybe I'll pull it up right now just so I can remind myself.
And just put it up there.
Yeah, I'll make sure our editor, my editor Liam, I'll get him to put it up on the screen for everybody that's listening. That way they can all take a look. People can take a look. I'm just going to look at it myself right now. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
When we did the website, and again, I give a lot of credit to, like the flyer. We had a flyer that we handed out when we did our presentation, our grand opening, if you will. Anthony Pierleone designed that, and we just spent some kind of a program that he uses. I don't know the name of it. And we all got together one night, and he added pieces and put pieces in places, and we argued about this one and that one, and we came up with that flyer. I think I sent you a picture of that. Mm-hmm. And then the logo. Of course, we went around and around and around on the logo, but we all finally agreed on the logo. And then just doing things like our mission statement and our vision statement, and what did we want to say? What did we not want to say? It's been like the board of directors of a company,
Yeah, but that's what needs to happen. I mean, that's what, not to bring up the animal rights groups, these things that can kind of be a thorn in our side, but that's as chaotic and wild as those organizations seem, they actually use corporate structure, and that's why they're good at what they do, right? They're organized,
absolutely.
They're clean, they have responsibilities, each of them, and that's why they're killing us all the time, because they're super fast and swift, and we need to play that game.
They are a well-oiled machine, make no mistake about it. And that's what our goal is. And maybe a little ego involved. I would love it if the US FWS would call me or call one of us and say, gentlemen, we respect what you're doing. We have a couple of questions we would like to ask in regards to the next step or something like that. For sure. We're an open book. We want to talk to you. We want, or the same with the zoo network. I got my toe in the door, and I can't tell you how proud I am of that. I can't disclose any names or locations yet because, again, the politics. But I would love it if the Zoo network as a whole, or the AZA, uh, uh, would reach out and say, "Listen, we're appreciative of what you do. We would like to maybe partner with you on something." Hell yeah.
Hmm.
We're all about that.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And
again, because of the law, we're not making any money on this, you know? Uh, it's everything has to be, well, essentially free.
yeah, yeah, it is at its roots there to protect the animals. That's
That's the bottom line. We are there to protect the animals and create these our own species survival plan, if you will. Uh, um, and to ensure their future.
yeah. Now, if someone's listening to this and they're inspired and they want to help or be involved in some way, I don't know. Like, you're not probably asking people to join the Zoom meetings because you can't have too many people on that
No,
conference
no,
table.
no,
But
no.
if somebody wants to help, is there a way that they can donate, or maybe they have an Egyptian tortoise at home and they would like to be part of the plan? Or
Well, animal wise, what we've been doing as a group is reaching out to those that we know or that we learn of that have animals, and and basically asking, would you consider participating? Would you? And of course, the first thing they think is, oh, they want me to donate my animal. Well, we're not asking for that. What we're asking for is the history of the animal. You know, uh, like I said earlier, if you have a male or a female that is of a whole different bloodline, hell, we'll send you a female or a
Mhm.
male. You know, as long as you're willing to work with us, and that's something that has to be addressed. Sadly, just the way it is in the world, you send somebody something for free, and then it died, but it didn't die. They sold it, you know.
Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Um,
you want to make sure you're vetting the right people.
yeah, yeah. So, um, what was the question again?
Oh, if anybody wanted to help, like, is there a place where they can donate, or if they do have
Oh,
an
as
Egyptian
far
tortoise?
as monies, we're not really set up yet. We're not incorporated, or we're not a nonprofit yet.
Okay.
Uh, we are literally we're working on that right now, and I'm not at liberty to discuss that yet again, but we have a couple of different directions that we can go, but we want to be able to be a nonprofit or affiliated with a nonprofit, so we can, like, for the genetics.
Yes.
Genetics, that's an expensive undertaking, and so we need to be able to secure funds for that, and you have to have a good nonprofit to be able to track all that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, I'm hoping here in the near future that we can come out and kind of make an announcement as to what we're going to do there.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. I know, because I know people will be listening and they'll want to either just keep track of what you guys are up to or support it in some way, whether it's just following you and just watching the story unfold. But so that's the next step then.
Yeah, it has to keep going, and that's the beauty part of having this group, is that it's not falling on one person. If one person's when somebody says, I need to take a break, like me, I'm the old guy in the group. I can't do this forever, and I'll forget half the things anyhow. But these young guys, they keep me going. I said, hey, well, what about this or what about that? And I say, you take care of it, and they do. They
Yeah.
find.
Well, and I think there is some immense value in sinking your teeth into a project that you're passionate about. I mean, that it's just such an important part of your own health and wellness, just doing something that you're interested in, and certainly surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded. And that's why I think this is such a good model for people who want to replicate it in another species. It's just, there's just so much value that can come out of this. You couldn't even begin to define that.
When, when the idea first came up, I reached out to a few other organizations, like organizations. And I asked them, I said, tell me some of the, if you would, tell me some of the pros and cons of your business model. What works, what doesn't work. And they were very generous. They were very generous with information. And, and they said, don't do this because you'll regret it, and don't do that, but do this. I wish I had done that, kind of a deal. And so I was able to keep track of all that stuff. There's a few people that are very, very, very savvy in the business world that I reach out to from time to time. From a business point of view, is this a wise decision or is it not a wise decision? Because as this grows, and it appears it just continues to grow, I want it to be professional. I want for it to achieve its goals of not only just protecting the animal, but the organizational aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really well said. Is there anything else we didn't say about CAP yet that you wanted to mention before we wrapped up? I think we kind of covered all the main points there. It's people will be inspired after listening to this. And the great thing about this is if they listen to the first episode, as I said earlier, the sentiment of you really caring for this species hasn't changed. It's just there, but now it's it's now honed in a program that's going to be even more potent.
I thought I was the only one that was as crazy enough to be this passionate about these guys. I thought I was on an island, quite frankly. And then when the whole ESA thing came about, and I started to reach out to different people, I realized that I wasn't. And that's what inspired me to move ahead with this, and inspired me to create this group, and then to allow me to almost step back and let this group run with it. Mm-hmm. That's kind of been the most inspirational thing for me is to hear or to see what they do and how they do it, and the passion that they've demonstrated. Just very, very heartwarming for me.
Yeah, and I'm sure they would all say that it comes down to having a person with a good leadership skills like yourself, and having the idea in the beginning. And so I think it sounds like it's working very well as a partnership. Can you, before I ask you to plug the website and everything, is there anything else that you wanted to say about CAP that we didn't cover? I think we did, but
I can go on and on and on, I suppose, just touting how great and wonderful they are and all that. I think for people, I would hope that if people are listening, that understand that we're about the animals. It's not about money. So if you have an animal or two or three, and you don't know where they were originally sourced from, reach out to us and work with us and allow us to help you to help us. It may be that the animals came from me indirectly, and if such is the case, then so be it. But you might be sitting on something that's very valuable to the program, and the program is about the species. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's one thing I'd like to get out there. And if there's other groups that maybe want to kind of copy what we're doing, hey, ask, you know, just
Awesome.
ask.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
mean,
think that's awesome. I think, even that you're saying, if you have animals that you're not sure where they're from, having, in lieu of genetic testing, having the historical checkpoints or steps of that animal's history or its parents' history is almost just as good as having the genetic testing. Just because if you
for
can trace
sure.
it back to the wild, then you guys will be
Yep.
able to put together a very good map of what the story for the Egyptian tortoise looks like in the U.S.
Yeah. And it's a relatively new species to this country when you think about it.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there were cases of them brought in many, many, many years ago, but it was really only in the 80s and 90s that they were imported. I mean, sadly, there was a lot of them imported. I won't argue that. I can't deny for a second that that the pet trade, the pet industry isn't or wasn't a part of the problem, but it's not anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not. Now it's a whole different problem over there. And I mean, even if you were to take 50 animals over there and let them go, there's no place to let them go to,
Exactly.
except for one preserve, and it's not very well managed. So, sadly, if you let them go there to just natural predation and cattle grazing and people and cars, and birds and everything else,
Yeah, it's not a good story.
it's not a good story. No.
Well, that's what is so exciting and inspirational about what you guys have done here. And I can't wait to watch it continue to grow and develop. And I just feel like it's just the very beginning of what's going to be a key factor for this species on the planet. And it may very likely could be the difference between them essentially going wiped off the planet and us having a really good idea of being able to keep them on the planet alive, even if it's just in captivity. Can you let everybody know where they can find more information, like the website, if there's any social media or anything like that?
Probably the easiest way, we have a Facebook page. So you can go on to Facebook, which is the, Kleinmanni Assurance Project. Or just go to one big long word, kleinmanniassuranceproject.com is the website. And then there's a link there, info. It just says info. I forget. I can read it here real quick. Don't keep crapping out. Yeah, I think it just says info, and but it'll direct you to one of us.
Okay.
That's something else we just created that here just recently, our own contact individual. So there will be a new link where you can reach out to any one of us. As a matter of fact, if you just go, I think it just got posted. There's a contact for each one of us now.
Okay.
If you just type in again, KleinmanniAssuranceProject.com, and it should open up a whole page of contact information there.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Ralph, thank you so much for being on the show again. I really, really appreciate it. And thanks for taking the initiative on this project and getting all the 7 people together. Like I said, I can't wait to watch this develop. So thank you so much. We'll definitely have to do another update at some point in the future to see how the project's going.
Well, thank you, and I hope this gets as much attention as the previous show did, because it set the tone, quite frankly.
Awesome.
As a matter of fact, when we did our presentation in Phoenix this past year, um, we used the intro that you posted on YouTube on our initial page. So
That's awesome.
yeah, I mean, it was without a doubt, it's been a huge help. So I'm the one that should be thanking you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And we'll have to thank Anthony as well, because I think he was the initial person that got me to reach out to you to have you on in the first place. So it all goes back to him.
Yeah, it's I can't tell you how this group has worked together. It's crazy. I wish I'd have done it 30 years ago and only created some kind of project where we can make millions, because we would have done well. But
Yeah.
it's been a challenge. Each one of them will tell you it's been a challenge, but it's worked. And I couldn't be more thrilled. Couldn't be more thrilled. And I'm really, really looking forward to the future to see how this all evolves.
Awesome. Well, until then, until we get an update, thank you so much. Congratulations on actually pulling this off and getting it going. And like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure being part of this story. So thank you for being on the show, and we'll have you back on in the future.
Thank you.
All right, that is the end of that episode. Ralph, thank you so much for coming on the podcast again and sharing this continuation of your story. As I said, the sentiment of your passion for saving the Egyptian tortoise is exactly the same as it was 4 years ago. I just love the fact that it is now honed and fine-tuned in a way that's going to give you and the others who are working on this project the ability to actually make a very positive difference. So listeners, I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, make sure you let us know in the comments on either Spotify or YouTube. If you want to follow the Kleinmanni Assurance Program, make sure you go check out their website and follow them on Facebook. And if you are interested in actually taking on one of these projects as well, again, like Ralph said at the end, you can feel free to reach out to them and get some pointers and some tips. If you are interested in supporting the podcast further, you can go to animalsathomenetwork.com. You can find the links in the show notes there. You also find links to Patreon, or just go to patreon.com/animalsathome. That does help me support the show and pay for the editing and the hosting fees and whatnot. Or you can head to animalsathome.ca and pick yourself up a t-shirt or a sweater. If you do, $5 is automatically donated to the Amazon Rainforest Conservancy. And I think that is it for this one. If you did enjoy it, make sure you share it on social media. That really does help and helps us find new listeners. And I think that is it. Thank you so much for listening. I will catch you in the next episode.